Hey there PCL fans, this is KlayDol26 coming at you with another video. This time I'm going to be going back over Tier 5 of our draft league. Now, as most of you know, we did a video series where I broke down each of the different tiers and kind of went through individual Pokemon, which ones I thought were the best for draft and the most viable. People seem to really like it. When I started out, I started with Tier 5, and I think a lot of people really questioned my picks, and rightfully so. I think I'm not sure I did the best job. I was still a little new to draft when I was doing it, so I figured I would kind of do a reevaluation after 2 seasons now, go back over and give everyone probably a little bit better advice for the draft for Tier 5. So here we go. I'm going to break down into this video for you guys. So this is Tier 5, a reevaluation. Basically, once again, this is pretty much the same as the last time. What you need to know about Tier 5. Tier 5 is our lowest tier for draft. So basically, it's kind of near the end of the draft what you're going to want to like pick up. Most of the Pokemon down there aren't considered as good, which is why it can be a little tricky deciding what to pick from down there. So Tier 5 is also very big. It's everything that's not in Tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4. All the other Pokemon are thrown into it. That includes anything that's not an evolved, fully evolved, pretty much, that wasn't in the upper tiers. So you can pick any of those, honestly. Anything from there is up for grabs. Some of them are pretty good. This is kind of the best place to scrape up what your team is lacking. So let's say you went through the whole draft and maybe for some reason, I don't think this is the best idea, but maybe you didn't get a steel type. This is a good place to try to pick up, like look around and be like, okay, what's a decent steel type down here? Just so you have it for your cores, you know? Stuff like that. Utilizing strong abilities, some things like Intimidate and Sand Rush still exist down here in Tier 5, so it's really good to be able to pick something like that up. If it can really help your team, Intimidate checks are really strong in draft, so I highly recommend if you didn't get something that you can pick up something down here. There's actually a lot of options. Hazard Control. There are plenty of rapid spinners for sure. I think there's actually some pretty decent rapid spinners down this low. And then defog, obviously. Lots of things get defogged, but I think you'll be able to really pick up some pretty decent things. You can also add some speed, bulk, or offense. Obviously the mons here, stat-wise, probably aren't going to be obviously as good as some of the upper tiers, but you can still pick up some stuff. There's plenty of speedy Pokemon. There's plenty of things that have some decent bulk, especially some of the evolved ones. You give them Eviolite, that's going to be really good. And definitely some good offensive ones, and we're going to go through a bunch of those. The other thing, like just picking up the types you need, like I had said, steel type. Like if you didn't get a steel type, it's a good place to try to grab one. If you want like an offensive rock type, because rock is really strong offensively, you can pick up one of those. Ice, anything like that. That's basically what you want to do. So Tier 5 is just kind of really cleaning up your team. What do I need? What am I missing? And with that, I'm going to break down a top 25 this time. Last time I did a top 10, I don't think that was enough. I did a top 20, and then I kind of checked this list with Clutch, who is also in our Discord, and he is very draft savvy. He's in a lot of different leagues, run his own too, so I kind of wanted to double check this list with him, and he suggested that the list was actually pretty good, and said to include 5 more. He gave a list of 5 more to include, so we put those in to give you guys the top 25 of some of the Pokemon that definitely get glanced over a lot and can actually be really good in draft. So we're going to start with number 25, one of my personal favorites in Tier 5 actually, AVALUGG. So AVALUGG is a pure ice type. 184 defense is the real selling point here, with rapid spin and recover. So basically this is a really good defensive wall, physical defense. It has recover. I think a lot of people forget that AVALUGG has recover, but it does. It gets recover. That 184 defense is really strong. Rapid spin, it is a slower rapid spinner, but it's really, I mean, as long as you're switching into something with a physical attack, he's gonna live and he's gonna be able to spin things away for you. He also gets curse, great setup move. Just make that defense higher and higher. Mirror Coat is obviously a really great tech move. His coverage, he does get Earthquake and Rock Slide. Iron Head and Crunch, great physical wall. Obviously, you look at the special defense, 46. You're not going to bring this thing in on a team with really strong special attackers. You're either going to bring him in against teams that really lack that, or you're going to bring him in after those are taken care of, or just kind of use him as a pivot, force them to switch those in. You get your rapid spin off and then switch them out, stuff like that. Just make sure you really think through it. But honestly, if you need a rapid spinner, there might be a few better on this list, but AVALUGG is a pretty good one, especially if Ice type kind of fits in with your team. I think it's pretty strong, pretty good. Just watch out for his special attack. You're not going to make it great, even with an assault vest, which I don't think I would recommend. It's not good enough. He needs the support in the special defense area with your team. So with number 24, we're going to do XATU. So XATU Season 1 was actually Tier 4. And we decided to move it down after a lot of discussion on that one after Season 1. Me and Hassam decided to bring it down. It does get Magic Bounce. That's kind of why I was a little on the fence with bringing it down. Magic Bounce is just such a strong ability. Again, I talked about good abilities. It's a great ability. If you're looking for a little hazard control that's not Rapid Spin or Defog, obviously it's not as reliable. You have to really predict when to switch your Magic Bounce in, but it can be really good. Roost, U-Turn, gets Screens, gets Haze, gets Trick, gets Psycho Shift, which we've seen with stuff like Cresselia with a Flame Orb. Stuff like that can be really good. It has 95 speed, so it's pretty speedy. Obviously, you look at those stats, it's not great. So XATU's not going to be something that comes in and gives you a lot of offensive power. It has 95 special attack, it's decent. But it's not going to be something you utilize mostly for offense. This is a great utility mod. Again, the Magic Bounce, the Roost, the U-Turn, that gives you a lot of just momentum on your team, the ability to kind of control things a little more. Screens is obviously really good. Everyone loves running screens on their team. Trick, Psycho Shift are a little different, but it also gets Calm Mind. The special, obviously its defenses aren't great. The Calm Mind helps a little bit, and then you can get Stored Power too. So kind of a mini Sigalith. I just don't think its stats are quite as great to kind of throw something like that out there, but it does get some decent coverage. It actually gets a Giga Drain. I didn't know that until really looking into it. It also gets Dazzling Gleam and Shadow Ball. Obviously really great, strong coverage. Not the best coverage, but again, this isn't really going to be an offensive mon. You can tech it that way if you need to. You can bring Giga Drain if you really think you need it based on what you're going to be switching into, but honestly, you're going to get this mon because you want the Magic Bounce, you want the Screens, you want the U-Turn. That's really what you want. It's obviously going to be very vulnerable to Pursuit and Knockoff. Always watch out for that whenever you're running a Psychic type, but that's not too big a weakness. This thing is still pretty good if you really need something like that on your team. So number 23 is AGGRON. AGGRON is a Pokemon that I really personally love. I wish it was a little bit better than it was, but sadly it is in Tier 5, but I think it is very, very strong in Tier 5. So, great wall breaker, obviously. 110 attack with 180 defense. He's going to live some hits. He's going to be able to hit pretty hard. Head Smash and Rock Head is always such a great combo. People have seen it with like the Tyrantrum I'm currently running in Season 3. I ran Head Smash in my last match and actually did really well with it. People were excited to see Tyrantrum actually do something and prove that it's worth a Tier 3. So AGGRON can do the same thing. Obviously it's a little slower. Obviously it has that 4 times weaknesses to ground and fighting, which can be a little tough. But you can really work around that, whether you get a Scarf or you run Rock Polish. It gets Rock Polish, so you can kind of set up a sweep with it. It's definitely possible, and it does have decent coverage. It has Elemental Punches, it gets Earthquake, it gets Outrage actually. Superpower, so it's a really strong offensive mon. It does get Stealth Rock, it does actually get Taunt too, which is really, Taunt's such a good move and really underrated, and people don't bring it enough, I think, and it can really help your team avoid nasty situations. I don't know if you're going to run Taunt very much on AGGRON because he's slower, but it's still, I want to put it out there as an option. Obviously a really strong Pokemon. I like the typing even with the 4 times weakness, but obviously that does hold it back a little bit. Obviously Ground. Earthquake is run by every team. Almost every team has a Ground type, so you always have to watch out for that. But if you need, like I said earlier, the Rock Stab, Head Smash is just such a strong stab move. It's going to hit things hard. It's just such a nice nuke, especially if you pair that with like Rock EMZ. You can do some really crazy things with it. And then Rock Polish, obviously I think is really great. Can give you the speed you need to try to sweep. So AGGRON I think is really good, really underrated. I do think people pick it, but I don't think we see enough of it. And I think I'd really like to see some people do some things with it. I think it can be really fun. It's 22. We've got DODRIO. So DODRIO, is one that has not been drafted yet in our league, which is surprising. We did move it down to tier 5. It just wasn't seeing much use. It is a glass cannon. It is the, I think, glass cannon of tier 5 if that's what you're going for. If you want something speedy, that hits hard, has good stab, then you're gonna pick DODRIO. That's what you're gonna really want. The fact that it avoids earthquakes I think is really strong. Its coverage is good. It does get knockoff, which I talk about a lot in my videos about draft. Knockoff is just one of the best moves you can run in draft. It's so strong. Getting rid of opponent's items, being able to do that is so good. It makes switching hard. So DODRIO gets that, which is really nice. It does get Swords Dance and a stab quick attack. So again, if you can switch it in and force things out that are maybe locked into an earthquake, set up that Swords Dance, and then quick attack with 110 attack plus 2 on the Sword Dance is really going to hit hard. And even without the quick attack, that 110 speed is going to outspeed a lot. It's really good. Jump kick, it's one of the coverage moves run really common on it. It's going to hit steel types hard. It's going to be really nice coverage for you. Hit rock types that can maybe want to switch into DODRIO to stop the return or stop the quick attack, you know, stop those stabs and the brave birds, obviously. So yeah, it's something to look into, especially if you've maybe already drafted your Z Crystal. Maybe you drafted Slinium Z, but you don't maybe have the greatest user for it, or even Normalium Z, like something like that. You can, or even Vitium Z for jump kick. DODRIO can be something you can pick up, throw that on, really surprise your opponent with a really big, powerful Z move that's actually coming off of something pretty fast. So I think DODRIO is really overlooked by our league, and I hope that changes, and I hope this video changes people's minds. And they're like, DODRIO, maybe this can be good. Something like that. I think it's good, and I think it's worthy of a draft pick. 21 is GRANBULL. GRANBULL is one of the ones I had last season, and people got to see. I did use it, I think 3 times maybe, and it actually did some work. Intimidate. Again, I talked about that earlier. Intimidate is such a great ability, one of the best, I think, in the format. And so if you didn't, I didn't have one on my team, so when I was looking in tier 5, I was like, alright, I want an Intimidate. My first choice was going to be STOUTLAND, which we'll talk about later. Got sniped from me, so I kind of looked through. I was like, okay, STOUTLAND's gone. There's still got to be some Intimidates, and I found GRANBULL. GRANBULL, slow. 120 attack, though, is really strong. And again, even though it's slow, that Intimidate, when you bring something in with Intimidate, it's going to force some things out. If you Intimidate something that really relies on its physical attack, it's going to want to switch out, because that lowered attack just isn't going to give it enough power. So when you do that, you're going to get the option to set up a move, do something with it. GRANBULL actually has a lot of good utility. I didn't really utilize that utility. I used it more as a check, and then I had Farium Z, so I used it as a big Z move nuke when I brought him in a lot. But it gets Heal Bell. That's something that's run a lot on GRANBULLs. Physically defensive GRANBULL run a lot of Heal Bell. Taunt obviously is good. Bulk Up. If the team is mostly physical that you're fighting, you switch in then Intimidate, you might be able to set up a Bulk Up when they switch something in, so that can be really good. Power Up Punch is really strong. Its coverage is great, in my opinion. You get Earthquake and Stone Edge, obviously, like one of the perfect combos. All the elemental punches, superpower, and Wild Charge. I did bring Wild Charge a few times. It was really nice for those bulky water types, bringing something in that can kind of hit decently with that. If you're expecting those to switch in after your Intimidate check. Obviously, its speed is an issue, but it has enough bulk. 90 hit points is actually pretty decent in draft, I think. It's pretty good hit points. 75 defense, it's very physically defensive. The 60 special defense is not great, but it's usable. It's not going to die a lot of times in one hit. You might be able to live something, but again, you're going to be bringing this in to check the physical threats anyways. But I think it's really strong, and I think people noticed me using it last season, and I think have really adjusted to that, and I think somebody did draft it this season. I'd have to double check, but I really do think someone did draft it after I had used it pretty well. So that's good. I think people are noticing kind of how to pick your tier 5s a little better, maybe. So number 20, we've got MAGMORTAR. MAGMORTAR is here because of that special attack stat. You see that 125 special attack. That's really good. 83 speed is not bad for draft. Pretty decent. Like my draft team right now, people know it's pretty slow. Its average is like 73 after my last trade, so it's like 83 is not bad. You can outspeed a lot of things in draft as long as you're speed creeping what you need to. The stab is good, obviously. okay coverage. I think that might be where MAGMORTAR maybe falters. It's pretty much got one set you're going to run. You get Focus Blast, Thunderbolt. You can throw Psychic on there if you want, but I think it's mostly going to be Fire Blast, Focus Blast, Thunderbolt, and a Hidden Power, whatever hidden power you need. Obviously the stats are great. I think they're really strong. Physical defense is lacking, but that's okay. You're bringing it in to hit things pretty hard. You can throw a Scarf on it. That can help his speed a lot. But again, the coverage is why he's not higher on the list. The coverage is a little lacking on MAGMORTAR, but I think he's still pretty strong. He does get drafted. He does see a little play, so I think people know that MAGMORTAR is pretty good. 19 is DRAMPA. DRAMPA I don't think we've seen a lot of. That's a shame. I think DRAMPA is really, really good. So, DRAMPA has 3 great abilities. Best one probably being Sap Sipper. A lot of people draft grass types these days, building around a grass, fire, water core. Sap Sipper just completely nullifying grass moves is really, really strong. Very few Pokemon get Sap Sipper. People really like having one on their team, but like you just got to keep it down, keep the grass types in check more, so that Sap Sipper just really helps. Berserk is really good. Cloud 9, stopping the weather, is obviously also really, really good. Great abilities. 135 special attack. This thing is a great wall breaker. Great stab and coverage. Obviously, Hyper Voice. You run Dragon Pulse or Draco Meteor on this thing. 135 special attack is going to hit hard. It's got enough bulk to live. The bulk is arguably better than like even GRANBULL. The hit points are a little lower, but the defense and special defense are pretty good. The coverage is much better than something like MAGMORTAR. You've got Focus Blast, Fire Blast, Grass Knot, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. So you've got Bolt Beam, you've got Surf, plenty of other things. So obviously it's slow. It has a lot of common weaknesses, which is why it probably doesn't get drafted as much. It's weak to fighting, ice, fairy, stuff like that. It doesn't have, I don't think, the best coverage for fairy types, obviously depending on the fairy type you're facing. But if you have anything with Trick Room, DRAMPA is going to do good. But I mean, what you really want to look at with something like this that has this kind of speed is not just Trick Room, but you're going to switch it into something that can't hit it hard, and you're going to hit a nuke button, so anything they switch in is going to take a lot of damage. That's, I think, the key with something like DRAMPA. Like, that special attack is so high. It's higher than MAGMORTAR, which we just talked about. Like, nothing is going to want to switch in to a DRAMPA move. Like, that Hyper Voice is going to hit hard. That Draco Meteor, as long as they're not switching in a fairy, if the fairy's already gone, that Draco Meteor is maybe even just going to kill anything that comes in. It's just really strong and something to really look for if you need some special attack on your team, if you need a nice nuke, if you need to use your Z moves. This thing can do a lot with Z moves. I think it's really good. So 18 we have LIEPARD. LIEPARD I put a lot higher on the list last time. I revisited it and I moved it a bit. I still think it's good. It's a great utility Pokemon. Prankster, Limber, or Unburden can all be good. Obviously Prankster is the one you're going to run the most. Being able to get off a lot of these utility moves before your opponent can move is really, really good. Limber can prevent paralysis. That can be okay if you're worried about that kind of thing. Unburden, I mean, if you're running with a Tapu team and you can run seeds on it and try to get something going, but the defenses aren't great here. This isn't something that's going to come in and take any hits at all. Something you can really do with it though, a lot of these good moves are like Fake Out, U-Turn, Knockoff, Pursuit, Sucker Punch, stuff like that. The Taunt is really good. Again, you want fast Taunt users. If you need a fast Taunt user, LIEPARD is great. The Prankster helps make sure you get it off early, but 106 speed. You might not even need to bring Prankster. If you wanted to try one of the other abilities, you could. And Taunt will hit. Otherwise, Z Hone Claws is a thing. If you've got Darkium Z, that gives you a speed boost as well as the attack boost and accuracy boost. Its coverage isn't the best. You're probably going to run, if you're running an offensive LIEPARD with maybe Z Hone Claws, and you're going to have something like Knockoff, Play Rough, and maybe Seed Bomb if you want to hit water types, but otherwise, coverage isn't great. It's a utility Pokemon. That's what you're mostly drafting it for. You can bring some surprises though. It has a little leeway with that, but I think mostly you're going to be Knockoff, U-Turn, Taunt, maybe Sucker Punch, or maybe Fake Out just to get some chip damage. I think Fake Out's a really strong move that a lot of Pokemon don't get. People don't use quite as much, so LIEPARD can do that and can be pretty good. But again, not quite as good as I originally thought maybe, but I still think it's worthy of our top 25. 17 is LYCANROC Day. LYCANROC Day does get drafted a lot, I think mostly because, like I talked about the abilities, Sand Rush. If you already drafted Hippopowdon or Tyranitar, LYCANROC Day can come in near the end of the draft and add you, a nice Sand Rusher. If you didn't get Excadrill or any of the other Sand Rush Pokemon, like LYCANROC can come in and give you some power. 115 attack, 112 speed, so you add that Sand Rush on there, and LYCANROC's going to outspeed almost anything, minus some Scarf users, minus some agility Pokemon, but otherwise Sand Rush is just going to be good. And again, you get that Accelerock though. Accelerock off of 115 attack is really strong. I think one of the common sets you'll see is Banded. Because you have that Sand Rush, you don't need to worry about Scarf, you don't need to worry about speed as much, so you can run a Banded set. You could do Banded Accelerock with also, Stone Edge, something like that, that can hit really, really hard. On top of that, it also gets Sucker Punch, so it has two good priority moves. Obviously the Accelerock gets a stab boost, but Sucker Punch can be great if your opponent's got really strong Psychic types. Lycanium Z is a thing. People don't seem to look into the specific Mon Z moves as much. They draft, the specific type ones, but you can draft something like Lycanium Z. Or we had talked about Munium Z earlier in the season, and I don't think anyone drafted it though, but you can. Coverage, it did get Drill Run in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. That made a huge, huge difference. Not getting Earthquake really killed Lycanroc in the metagame. It dropped really fast from OU down to PU just over a few months because it just didn't have that coverage. But Drill Run gives it a little bit more. It's obviously not as good as Earthquake, but it gives it something. Fire Fang and Thunder Fang are both really strong. Fire Fang you're going to run a lot more. Iron Head, great for fairies if you're worried about bulky fairy type. Crunch, Zen Headbutt, it gets those. They're not the best, but you can bring them if you need them. Frail, obviously it's really frail. 65 defense, 65 special defense, not the best. But it's such a strong offensive option with Sand. I don't think I would draft Lycanroc Day without something with Sand, just because the Sand Rush is just so nice. You don't really want to use any of the other abilities, I don't think. I think it gets Steadfast. It's just, if you really need that Accelerock, maybe you could still draft it, but otherwise you're going to draft Lycanroc when you have a Sand user. But it's going to be a really nice offensive option that's a tier 5. It's super cheap for you to add to your team. Number 16 is Masquerain. So Masquerain does see draft use in our league, and I think that is mostly because of sticky webs. Everyone loves having a sticky web user against a lot of these fast draft teams when people draft really fast ones. And the nice thing about Masquerain with its sticky webs is it has Intimidate. So you bring Masquerain in on a physical attacker, you get that Intimidate, and they're going to be forced to switch. When they're forced to switch, like I said, with Intimidate, you can drop those sticky webs pretty easily. And then after that, you could maybe set up a Quiver Dance if you think they're just bringing in like a Rapid Spinner or something. You get a nice setup. The Quiver Dance is going to help a lot. You got 100 special attack. Quiver Dance is pretty good. It turned Masquerain into kind of a mini Volcarona. Its speed isn't quite as good, but that's okay. I think it's got decent coverage. I mean, Hydro Pump, you've already got like a really strong water move on this Pokemon. So Hydro Pump, Bug Buzz are going to be great. Giga Drain and Ice Beam. I didn't know Masquerain actually got Ice Beam until doing this video. That's really good if you want to run a Quiver Dance Masquerain. Obviously, the biggest drawback with Masquerain, that 4x weakness to Rock, so Stealth Rocks are a problem. You have to back Masquerain up with a really good Rapid Spinner. Probably a Rapid Spinner if you really want to utilize your sticky webs. But I think the Quiver Dance is just good enough that you really want to try to utilize that with it and not just use it as sticky web Intimidate. But I think it has the options. And I think people should look more into that. I know they just really use it for a sticky web user, but I think you can do just a little bit more with your Masquerain to make it pretty good. Obviously, I'm putting it a little higher on the list than a lot of things, and I think it fits there, mostly just because of how much use it actually does get. It's really good, really strong. So 15 is Mudsdale. Mudsdale has seen a lot of draft use. People realize that it is actually pretty good if you need a late game ground type. So 125 attack is actually pretty good. really good, actually. Even though it's slow, we've talked about a lot of slow Pokemon. Tier 5 does have a lot of slower Pokemon, but you can really try to utilize that against what your opponent is using. Stamina is great. Stamina helps the defense just a lot, but obviously special sweepers are going to hurt a bit. 85 special defense still isn't terrible. MUDSDALE can take a hit or two. AV can help support that. I think an Assault Vest set can be pretty good on MUDSDALE. You can also run Stealth Rocks with it. Stealth Rocks is always nice. You should always have a Stealth Rocker on your draft team. Always. The coverage, close combat, heavy slam, rock slide, it's not a lot. It's fairly shallow coverage, but I think that covers most of your bases. You don't need much more than that. Earthquake and rock slide hit pretty good. It does suck that MUDSDALE doesn't get Stone Edge. The Edge Quake is just a little bit stronger. That 100 power makes a big difference compared to Rock Slide. And because of its speed, you're not going to get flinches off of Rock Slide. But I mean, the coverage is still decent enough. If you run like a banded set, the Rock Slide's going to hit pretty hard. Heavy Slam, obviously really strong. Close Combat is one of the best, if not the best fighting move, besides maybe Jump Kick. Close Combat is really good. So, a great kind of bulky offensive mon if you really need it, I think. And the ground typing is just really good. Like, I think everybody has ground types on their team usually, so if you need one later in the game, you don't want to take one of the big ones, you can just let MUDSDALE fall late. That's totally fine. MUDSDALE is going to be good. It can come in on most electric types and do just fine. So 14, we have LURANTIS, which has seen some draft play recently. Some people were really excited to try it out, and I do think it is actually pretty good. Sound like broken record. Obviously the speed, not great. It needs some help there, because it is more of an offensive Pokemon. But the real draw, obviously, Contrary. Just like Superior, Contrary is really nice. You get those Contrary Leaf Storms, are just really, really good. It also gets super power, so you can utilize the physical attack as well. It also is a good utility mon. It's actually pretty decent. It has Defog, which is weird for a pure grass type. It has Synthesis, Aromatherapy, and Knockoff. Knockoff, I think, is really nice. If you run like a superpower Contrary set, then you can hit pretty hard with some knockoffs. Poison Jab is really strong. A lot of things get Poison Jab, but that's really nice. X-Scissor, it always throws me off that it's not a bug type too, but it's not bug type, so X-Scissor is more of a coverage move, not stab move, but those are all pretty good. I think LURANTIS is good enough to make it into our top 15 here, but it just doesn't quite have the offensive presence as some of the lower ones we're going to talk about. But I think people are going to utilize that Contrary, utilize its utility. It's a nice defogger that's not weak to Stealth Rock, so that's always a good thing. It doesn't resist, but at least it's not getting hit too hard. Synthesis to recover all of that. The bulk is okay, actually. 90 and 90, pretty good. 70 hit points, not bad. Aromatherapy, it can be a Cleric a little bit. But I think the Knockoff and the Contrary are really the big draw for LURANTIS. Pretty strong if you need a late grass type to pick up. 13 is Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime has seen some draft play. We've recommended it to people and they've taken us up on that. 100 attack, 120 special defense, 90 speed. So I think Mr. Mime is one of those Pokemon that kind of has its stats all in the correct areas, which is rare sometimes, especially in tier 5. 45 attack, obviously you're never going to utilize that attack, and that's fine. It can be as low as it wants so that we can have more stats in other places. Defense, not as great, so running Reflect is usually really nice, but again, Mr. Mime gets both screens. That's kind of what he's done since Gen 1. That's kind of been Mr. Mime's thing, you know. Nasty Plot and Calm Mind are really great. It also gets Baton Pass with those, so we did change our Baton Pass rules. Before you could pass a Nasty Plot because it was just one stat. Now you can pass Calm Mind, and that's okay. So I think that changes him a lot, makes him a lot higher. I did think he deserved a top 15 spot. The typing is really fun. I think it adds some weaknesses with the fairy typing. Steel and Poison. Psychic doesn't help much with that. Psychic can at least hit Poison types, but the problem is you want to make sure you're outspeeding them. The coverage is good. Focus Blast, Grass Knot, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt. That's fine. It's not that bad. The stabs are good. Screens are good. It has good setup moves, so if you really need a good setup sweeper to come in, I think Mr. Mime's great. It doesn't do too much outside of either baton passing those or running the screens offensive set. Otherwise, I mean, people are going to kind of predict it, and I think that's why it's maybe not quite as high. And its stats still aren't maybe as good as some of the other ones we're going to talk about, but I think Mr. Mime is really strong and something you should definitely consider on your team if you need a really strong special attacker, if you want to try out some baton passing, and if you want to throw some screens in your team. It's really, really good. So 12 is PALOSSAND. PALOSSAND sees draft every season. I don't need to talk much about PALOSSAND. Everyone knows he's really good. Typing is really nice defensively. Water compaction is a pretty good ability. Stealth rocks, shore up, destiny bond, trick, pain split, lots of good utility. And 100 special attack, 110 defense. You throw in coverage like Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, Sidekick, you're going to be pretty covered there. It's a ground type that, with that water compaction, it can do well against water types. That's always really nice. You just gotta watch out for, again, grass types, stuff like that. So, and it's really slow. We've talked about the speed. The speed in Tier 5 is not going to be great. Usually, unless you're getting LYCANROC Day or something like that, you're not really looking for your speed down here in Tier 5, so that's okay. You want some bulky offense. You want to throw some Destiny Bond tricks in here. It has Shore Up, so it can heal, which is really nice. Stealth Rocks, obviously really good. You always want a Stealth Rocker on your team. I think PALOSSAND does enough to really carve itself out in Tier 5. It's just one of the best. If you really want that Stealth Rock user that also has some other tricks that a lot of ghost types like to do, like Destiny Bond, I think it is well worth a spot. So if you saved your ground type until Tier 5, PALOSSAND's a really good pickup. 11 is KOMALA. So I drafted KOMALA, and somebody in the other league, I believe Jane, drafted KOMALA as well. We both realized, nobody's ever drafted this. This is probably actually a really good Pokemon. So it is immune to status. That's one of the biggest draws. The comatose ability makes KOMALA act as though it is asleep, even though it can still attack. So it's not just that it can't be put to sleep, it can't be paralyzed, it can't be poisoned, it can't be frozen, it can't be burned. KOMALA could come in on a Will-O-Wisp and nothing will ever happen. An 115 attack on something that cannot be Will-O-Wisp is pretty good, in my opinion. It also gets Rapid Spin. I think that's maybe the second biggest draw after the status. The Rapid Spin really helps teams. It's one of the best spinners, I think, in this tier. The 65 speed, it's not as bad as some of the other things we've seen in this tier, but it's not great. You're probably not utilizing that. I think its special bulk is where it really shines. I think a lot of people would run an Assault Vest set with KOMALA. Assault Vest with Rapid Spin and then 3 other attacks is really good. It also gets Bulk Up and Sword Dance, so if you're not too worried about your speed or you're running a Trick Room, maybe you can try to get at least 1 Sword Dance off before you start hitting with stuff. It gets U-Turn and Knockoff, 2 of the moves that I talk about a lot. Sucker Punch is also a really, really strong priority. I think that's well worth noting if you're coming against this Pokemon. And then Coverage, Wood Hammer. That's the first one. Wood Hammer is big, and having that coverage on KOMALA is really great. Wood Hammer is going to hit water types so hard. It's insane. And then Play Rough, Iron Head, Superpower, and Earthquake. So it doesn't get a rock move, that's okay. It's got so much coverage to work with its offensive stats, and I just think the ability and the Rapid Spin is just so good. And it has setup options, it has some momentum with U-Turn if you need to switch out. The Knockoff, again, Knockoff is just crazy good. To anything switching in that's not a Mega, you're going to knock that item off, which is really nice. So I think KOMALA is one that people have definitely slept on and not really picked much, but I think hopefully we'll get to see it do some stuff when me and Jane start using it this season. I haven't brought it yet, but I think I plan on bringing it at some point. It's really strong, so I'm excited to use it. Number 10, we're going to break into the top 10 now. We're starting with ZANGOOSE. So ZANGOOSE is one of those one-trick ponies, so it was kind of tough to place. It's like, it only really does 1, maybe 2 things, but they're both offensive. It's going to be an offensive mon. It doesn't have the bulk to really do much else, so if you need a good offense, ZANGOOSE is the way to go. But I think it deserves a top 10 just for how hard it moves. So you get Toxic Boost. So Toxic Boost is a great ability, boosts that attack when it's toxic. So you run Toxic Orb with 115 attack, and then you run Facade, and you hit like a truck to anything but steel types. That's what you really gotta watch out for with Zangoose. It's not gonna hit steel or rocks quite as hard with that, but it does have the close combat coverage, which is really nice to hit those. Just depending on what you're running, you can also run a Swords Dance or Belly Drum set. I think Belly Drum with Toxic Boost could be kind of insane. Obviously, you're only going to hit 1 or 2 things with that, but with the 90 speed, I think it's good enough. It does need some speed control, probably. It does get quick attack, though, if you need to hit on the run before it dies. But Zangoose isn't really going to live a hit, so you either want to make sure it's already going to outspeed whatever's left, or you're running it on a Sticky Webs team. Or you can pass Agility now, because we can pass speed. It does get Knockoff, obviously really great. It does get Pursuit as another kind of pseudo priority. It gets all the elemental punches, Poison Jab, Rock Slide, X Scissor. It's got great coverage. Again, the only thing kind of holding it back is the speed control that it really needs. But I think it's a great Pokemon. It does get drafted and it does get used, but it's a one-trick pony, so always make sure to know, like, your opponent probably knows what it's going to be doing. So get it in when you really need to. KECLEON. KECLEON is one we've debated a lot about, just about how good it is. I didn't include it in my last video, and I got in a lot of trouble for that. People were really upset that I didn't include KECLEON. It was a total oversight. The Protean is really good. It's basically bulky offense Greninja. The biggest drawback compared to like Protean Greninja is the speed. 40 speed is not good. But it has Shadow Sneak and Sucker Punch priority, and again, those will be stab moves. Knockoff, Stealth Rocks, Trick Room, Recover. A lot of utility options. That's why it makes my top 5 mostly. Not the Protean, honestly. Not the Protean, but the fact that it's got the Stealth Rock, the Trick Room, the Recover, so it can use Trick Room to set up its speed really nicely. It's got all the elemental punches. It's got Drain Punch, Power Up Punch, Rock Slide. So I wouldn't say it has like really big heavy hitter moves. That's probably what holds it back, maybe a little more than anything besides the speed. But just the fact that it has so many different types it can turn into is really nice. All the elemental punches, so you really don't know exactly what KECLEON turn into, but I think overall you're going to be running Knockoff, and you're probably going to be running Sucker Punch or Shadow Sneak, so your opponent can kind of plan a little bit for that. I just think it has a lot of options. An Assault Vest set can be really good. That 120 special defense just makes that even bigger. Or obviously a Trick Room set, a Choice set can be good. KECLEON has options, which is really nice. Your opponent can't just 100% guess what it's going to do. I fought it last week, and I think they used Stealth Rock, and then they died. I was able to handle KECLEON well enough, but I think if you plan around it really well, KECLEON can be really, really strong. Again, it's a top 10 for me. For tier 5. Number 8, we've got Jinx. So Jinx is a really, really, really strong special sweeper, special wall breaker. I think Jinx is just really nice scarfed Pokemon. If you need a little speed boost, if you want to have a nice scarfed sweeper on your team, if you're missing that, I think Jinx is great. I had it last season. I only used it once, but I didn't actually get to bring it in because I won before I could use Jinx, but its coverage is really nice. Its stab moves are really good. That's why it's here. Other things that you can do with it, if the 95 speed is okay with you, you can run Nasty Plot or Calm Mind. Substitute with those, really good if you're worried about something coming in with like Bullet Punch. Because obviously with 35 defense, any priority physical move is going to pretty much kill you. So that's probably the one drawback for Jinx and why it's not higher, but I think 8 is a good place for it. It does get Trick. You can run Z Lovely Kiss. Some people like that with Normalium Z. Focus Blast, Grass Knot, Shadow Ball. Coverage, again, it's okay. You get hidden powers with it though, obviously, as a special sweeper, so you're not too worried about that. But you get, you run Ice Beam, you run Psychic, you run Focus Blast, and then a hidden power. That's going to be really good, and you run that with a Scarf. 115 special attack, you're going to be able to clean up at the end of the game. I think Jinx is a nice cleaner. Save it till the end, use whatever move's going to be best, and just kind of clean up the mess, basically. And I think it's really good at that, and that's why it's at this spot in the draft. I think it's that good. Tangela. So Tangela was one I definitely overlooked, and I apologize for that. Sometimes it's hard to really look down into some of the unevolved Pokemon and really compare them, but you just gotta throw a Violite on this. 115 defense. This thing is going to, and you get Regenerator. I mean, this is just one of the best defensive walls you could ask for in Tier 5 easily. Grass typing is always really good. If you need a bulky grass type, somebody already took Tangrowth, somebody already took Amoonguss. Just get Tangela down in Tier 5. It's gonna be good. You want to watch out for the knockoff. Obviously, anytime you're running a Violite user, the knockoff is going to kill you. It is going to hurt really bad. The one other thing that really puts Tangela above some of the rest and why it's so high on my list is that 100 special attack. So you throw a Violite on here and then it's got 100 special attack. That's just so strong, and it gets knockoff, which is nice utility. Obviously, you won't hit hard with knockoff with 3 to 5 attack. But you get Sludge Bomb, and you get Giga Drain. You run those, you're going to be doing pretty well. You don't get much other utility, but that's okay. Or not utility, coverage, but you get plenty of utility. Leech Seed, Synthesis, Sleep Powder, Toxic. A nice Toxic stall set. You get Regenerator, Toxic, Synthesis on this thing. It's going to be really, really good. I think Tangela is pretty strong and well worth the top 10 spot for our Tier 5 list. Lickilicky is one that people had been drafted, so I had to look a lot closer into it and be like, why didn't I think of this one before? So, honestly, you look at the stat distribution, and for a Tier 5, that's really good. That's probably what a lot of people are looking at. The Cloud 9 ability, too. A lot of people have tried to draft some weather teams. People want to keep things like Hippowdon and Tyranitar in check. Then that's really, really strong. It's got Swords Dance, Belly Drum, and Curse. All of those really, really strong setup moves. It has 50 speed. You don't need to worry about it then. You can run a Curse set, and that can be really good. Belly Drum is really nice. Knockoff. I don't need to talk more about Knockoff. You all already know. Power Whip is good coverage. Really nice for those water types. It hits really hard. Earthquake, Rock Slide, Gyro Ball, all the elemental punches, then Headbutt. It gets a lot. It gets really, really, really good coverage. This is a really great bulky offensive mon. It's a really good setup sweeper. You set up and you hope your opponent can't really handle it. Its only weakness is fighting, so that's always, always really strong. So I think people saw obviously more than I saw in Lickilicky. I had to dive deep into it, but now I really see where it stands out and where it can be good. I think a Belly Drum set with Citrus Berry or something can be pretty strong. Just really good. I like it, and I hope we see a lot more of it in draft and people sweep with it. So number 5 is one I don't know if anyone has drafted, but it was brought to my attention when I brought up that I wanted to redo this video, and I didn't think about it because I honestly thought Passimian was Tier 4, but it's not. And Passimian is considered one of the better never used, but we moved it down to Tier 5. I'm not exactly sure why. I do think it kind of fits Tier 5 though. I don't think it's quite good enough for Tier 4. I don't know if it ever get used, but U-turn knockoff. I talk about it with every Pokemon that gets it. Really good. 120 attack, 80 speed, 100 hit points. It's pretty good. The bulk is good. 90, 60. Basically, this is another one of those Pokemon that just has stats in all the right places. 80 speed lets you outspeed enough. You throw a Scarf on it, you're going to outspeed most things. It is, I think, lacking an ability that is strong enough to make it Tier 4. I think that's why it's down here. It doesn't really have anything usable, which is okay. You're basically picking Passimian to get you some offensive presence. So you've got Earthquake, Rock Slide, Gunk Shot, Iron Head, Seed Bomb, Acrobatics. Really, really great coverage, to be honest. I think Gunk Shot really makes it stand out a bit. It's a fighting type that can take on fairies if it needs to. Bulky fairies, a lot of them are going to be a lot slower than Passimians, so that's really, really good. And then Earthquake, Rock Slide, good combo. Obviously, you'd rather have Stone Edge, but that's okay. But yeah, I would run U-turn knockoff with a Choice Scarf set. And after that, I would maybe probably run Earthquake and a fighting move. You can throw Gunk Shot on instead of Earthquake if you need it, but that's probably the set I would run. I think it's really, really strong, and hopefully after this video, seeing how it's right there with my top 5, people might just go draft this thing right away. I think it's really strong. So number 4 is Skuntank. It's about right where I had it in my last video. I have not changed my mind about Skuntank. Really, really, really good defensive typing. Really good. Its only weakness being ground. So that's really strong. The hit points are good. The bulk is pretty decent for those hit points. It's a defogger that is not weak to Stealth Rock. We talk about that a lot. Haze and Taunt, really good. It's got a lot of utility. Pursuit and Sucker Punch. Those give it that priority that it can really use. The speed is actually at 84. That's not too terrible. Z-Hone Claws I had talked about before with LIEPARD. Skuntank can do the same thing, and that gives it a speed boost. So you can watch out if somebody wants to run an offensive Skuntank and has Darkium Z, run Z-Hone Claws. That's really, really strong. Play Rough, Shadow Claw, and Fire Blast are all really pretty decent coverage. You can utilize the little bit of special attack it has with that Fire Blast. Otherwise, it does want to watch out for Steel types. Steel types are going to wall Skuntank, so watch out for a Fire Blast. Not much else to say about Skuntank. I think it's pretty good. It has proved itself in draft and is still at number 4 in my mind. I think about the same where it was in my last video. So number 3 is Stoutland. Again, another one that kind of didn't move much. 3 really, really, really good abilities. Intimidate, Scrappy, and Sandrush. Again, I talked about Sandrush and how this is a really great one to kind of pick up for that. But even if you don't have a Sandstorm user, the Intimidate and the Scrappy are really, really nice. You've got 110 attack and 80 speed, so you pick up Scrappy, you can hit ghost types. If you're worried about someone that drafted, say, Gengar or Blacephalon or something like that, and you want something that can maybe take a hit off of those and be able to hit really hard with maybe a return, if you don't expect him to switch, you can run Scrappy on this. Otherwise, you can also run Pursuit Trapping if you think the ghost type will switch out, if it's worried about you, so that's really, really nice to have on something like this. Facade is good if you're worried about status, because it gets the stab boost from that. Coverage, it gets all the elemental fangs, Superpower, Play Rough, Iron Head, Wild Charge, and Stomping Tantrum. No Earthquake, sadly, but it at least has something. But I think the Intimidate checking, the Sand Rushing, the Scrappy, all 3 abilities are very, very usable in draft. And that's what really makes it stand out, not just the offensive stats, but you don't know which ability it's going to be bringing. The coverage is just absolutely insane, and it gets really, really hard hitting moves. Superpower, Wild Charge, Play Rough, all are really, really strong moves. So you can even throw one of your Z moves on here, and that can probably do a lot of damage. So Stoutland, really great, really nice bulk, decent speed. Stats just all in good places. Number 2, same as last time. I think these top 4 are just about the same. So we've got CLAYDOL, best rapid spinner in tier 5, easily. I think the real draw for it is it has Levitate, so none of your opponent's sticky webs, spikes, toxic spikes do not touch CLAYDOL, and it resists Stealth Rock. So this is just about the best rapid spinner you can ask for in tier 5, and honestly one of the best rapid spinners you can ask for in the game. Obviously Excadrill and Starmie are probably a little better at that. Delmise is a really nice one. It's got to watch out for that toxic spike though, can really hurt it. But CLAYDOL has that little niche of not being hit by any of the ones on the ground, and Stealth Rock resisting. So that's really nice. A lot of people will run Rapid Spin with their own Stealth Rock. You can throw those Stealth Rocks right back, and then screens. It's a really nice screen setter. It's got a lot of bulk, so you throw that on there, and your opponent's not going to be able to do much about it. They've got to get a really, really strong wall breaker in to get past CLAYDOL in one hit. Trick Room is a really nice thing to also throw on CLAYDOL if you need it to get your team going. If it's a little slower, the Calm Mind is nice. Bulk, obviously great. I think the defensive typing is good, and Levitate on any defensive Pokemon is going to be really strong. You can switch it in on Earthquakes and not worry about it at all. It has some coverage. I don't know if we need to talk about that too much. It's not really an offensive mon. You can run Ice Beam, Grass Knot, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball. Earth Power Psychic, run those on it if you really need to, if you want CLAYDOL to not be too passive, but I think otherwise if you really want to make sure it's not too passive, you're just going to run Toxic and maybe Earth Power to hit Steel types, that's it. But I always like to talk about the coverage. People like to do weird things with it, so I think that's good. But I think just the fact that it's one of the best things to come in on hazards, like, period, one of the best things that can come in on hazards and spin them away and then set up its own stealth rock is really good. Part of me almost wonders if it should be a tier 4, but I don't know. I don't think that's gonna fly, so I think it's fine in tier 5 probably, but I think it is definitely one of the strongest tier 5s. And then we've got WEEZING. My same number 1 as last time. I think most people agree with me on that. The defensive typing with Levitate, crazy good. It's only weak to Psychic. That's really nice. It's got those toxic spikes, Haze, Taunt, Pain Split, Destiny Bond. I think people forget it gets Destiny Bond. It's really good. Will-O-Wisp and Toxic, great things to run. I think a lot of WEEZING sets run Will-O-Wisp. You run Toxic Spikes, you can throw Will-O-Wisp on whatever's already in front of you if you need to. You run Pain Split to make sure you're doing damage and recovery a little bit. Z-Haze can act as recovery. I don't think people have looked too much into that. It obviously depends on what your Z move is. Fire Blast, Dark Pulse, Thunderbolt, and Shadow Ball coverage. Most people will run special sets just because its physical attacks aren't where they probably should be. So, Fire Blast though really hits those steel types that Sludge Bomb's not going to hit. That's the nice thing about WEEZING, I think, is it's really good defensive mon. It's got a lot of good defensive utility, but you can also use it a little more offensively than some of the other walls that we've seen. I think that kind of makes it stand out, especially in a fairy heavy meta. Everybody's got a fairy. I think WEEZING is a really nice option to bring into fairies that might be running something like Play Rough. It's gonna do pretty well against those. And I just think its stats are pretty solid overall. 120 defense is crazy. 70 special defense is not bad. So I think WEEZING has definitely earned its spot up there as the number 1 tier 5 still is. But I don't think many people argue that. I think WEEZING has proved itself. Here are some honorable mentions. Some of these were in my video from the last time that I didn't think were quite as good, like Probopass, Caracosta, so some of the rock types that I know I love, I might put a little higher than they probably deserved. I think Kabutops was worth a mention for a rapid spinner. It also gets Swords Dance and Aqua Jet, so it can do a lot more than people think. Piloswine is down in tier 5 now. Pretty decent Eviolite user, has that Ice Shard, is really nice. Dusclops gets a lot of use, it's a really good Eviolite user, has a lot of defensive potential. Yeah, Golurk has seen some use. I don't know if anyone's actually brought it. Oricorio I talked about the last time, just with the different types you can bring and having a nice defogger that you can bring different types on. Leavanny has seen some use with sticky webs. If Masquerain gets taken, Leavanny usually goes after that for anyone that wants the sticky webs. Musharna people I don't think draft, and I think people should look more into as a really nice defensive Pokemon. Regice has actually seen draft. I think its stats are pretty good. Electivire almost made the list. Zebstrika is a really nice, fast electric type. The only reason it did not make my list, it almost did, its coverage is pretty shallow. It's just nowhere near as good as a lot of other electric types. Electrode is okay. Someone did draft it and actually did some decent things with it last season, so I definitely wanted to throw it on the list as an option, but I think Zebstrika is usually going to pay off more for you if you want a fast electric. Armaldo sees some use. It's a nice rapid spinner. It's got some pretty strong stab moves. Personally, I like Kabutops a little more than Armaldo, just for it's a little faster, and it has that Sword Dance potential, but Armaldo's still pretty good. It does get Sword Dance too, but it's slower. And doesn't, I think it does have Aqua Jet actually, but it's not a stab Aqua Jet. And then Lycanroc Knight sees some use. The fact that your Stone Edges never miss is really good, because everyone hates a Stone Miss. And then Kling Klang, if you're looking for a defensive steel type, if you didn't get one earlier in draft for some weird reason, you really should have, but if you didn't, Kling Klang is really good. I think that's about it. Alolan Exeggutor saw a pick. We're waiting to see what it does. I think it's good enough, and I wanted to throw that little dork in my image here, and I think he's pretty decent. So that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the reevaluation. I apologize for the first video not being maybe where it should have been. At least my top 4 are pretty much the same, and I think people agree with me at least on those. I just didn't have quite the experience in draft when I made the first video. I learned a lot through making those videos, and they got better and better each time, so I'm not sure I need to reevaluate any of my other tiers. I think they're overall pretty good. But yeah, I really wanted to redo tier 5 and just make sure I brought you guys like a little bit more correct information and better overall content on the tier 5. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Yeah, I think that is it from me, and I will see you guys next time. I hope you enjoy our future content and enjoy the rest of season 3 at PCL.